All right, hi everyone, and welcome to tonight's presentation. Tonight we are joined by Dallas Davidson of Dancing Leaf Farm, and tonight she will be giving us a tour of her studio and the colorful fleece she makes from raw wool. We'd like to thank tonight's sponsor, Turning Point Real Estate, and reminder, please remain muted during the presentation. You can send any questions you have throughout, and as always, there will be an opportunity to unmute for a Q&A. If you enjoyed tonight's presentation, make sure to check out our website and register to join us again next week. Bill, actually, I believe I heard that you might prefer a format of questions throughout.
Did you want questions as we go?
Marion said that if she could read, I don't know how.
Okay.
You do that.
Okay, perfect. We can do questions throughout. So feel free to send any questions you have throughout in the chat and we'll read them for you. Without further ado, Bill and Dallas, take it away.
Okay, welcome. Good evening to everyone. We're out here at Dancing Leaf Farm. I'm going to turn this over to, as soon as I change my camera here, there we go. This is Dallas Davidson, and she is the proprietor and owner of Dancing Leaf Farm. You see the DLF back there. And Dallas is going to take us through the whole process tonight from sheep to shawl, and literally that's what we're going to see. We're going to see sheep. We're going to see how she gets the wool and what she does with it. So Dallas, take it away.
Hi, welcome. Welcome to my farm. First, I want to tell you where I came up with the name Dancing Leaf Farm. When I bought this place in 1983, we're on a hill and there's always a breeze and the leaves are always dancing. And I grew up near Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. And I really wanted a Native American name because I had a lot of friends that had names depicting of what their environment was like Sleep by the River, or that was really their last name. So that's where Dancing Leaf Farm came from. So it has a little bit of meaning.
My wife had a student whose last name was Rides at the Door.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See? So this is the barn where the sheep live. And we're going to pass the chickens. 9 chickens. There's in my weaving and things. So,
say hi to the chickens.
Come say hi. They're wondering what we're doing.
And noises.
And here's the sheep. I'm going to call them over with grain, which is candy to them. The one on the right is Delilah, and she's a Teeswater sheep. And the one on the left, who is showing her butt, is a blue-faced Leicester. And they're both English breeds and they're both wool breeds. There is a difference between the wool breeds and the meat breeds, although some are dual purpose too. With wool breeds, they put their production into the wool. And these girls were sheared in April. So they don't have too long yet, but I will shear them again next April, and their wool will be about 6 to 8 inches long. I still have their fleeces, which I'll show you over here in a minute. This is my view looking west. Before those trees grew up, we could see the Catoctin and then the Blue Ridge beyond that. So Harper's Ferry is about straight that way. You'll see there's 3 beehives back there. I have beekeepers that use my land for the bees. I have a lot of colorways named after bees and a lot of patterns that I use for the bees. You'll see right now the 2 hives on the right. They're doing something. They're trying to cool off the hive because it's been so hot today, and it's called bearding. And they're putting their bodies against the hive and flapping their wings to keep the queen cool inside. So they'll stop that when the sun goes down and then go inside. But that's I'm learning all these fun facts from my beekeepers. So I'll call the girls over. This is how I get them to go places too. Girls, come here. Come on. Yeah. Usually it's, there they come. Hello. Come on, can you run any faster? Yeah. Come here. This is Sunny Bunny. She's the one that always takes it. Nyla hardly ever does. She gets the leftovers down there. She's shy. No, see? I love her freckled face though. So see this Roman nose and the big ears? That's indicative of the blue face, Lester. So she's funny.
They
So
seem
this is
very
her-
happy out here.
This is our wool that was sheared in April. And this is Delilah, the sheep. Well, you can see how 4 times, and then I'll lay it out here, and it dries in the sun. And even the sun, you can see how different
Oh yeah,
the wool
it's
is.
a curly hair.
Yeah. So here's a long lock, and this is called the staple length, and this is called the crimp. And I have really loose crimp. My neighbor Audrey has sheep also, and her sheep are highly crimped. So you'll see the difference here.
Yeah.
And if you could smell this or feel it, you'd feel all that lanolin in here. You can see how yellow this is. She has a lot more lanolin in it. This will all come out really nice and clean once it's washed. So when I dye the yarn, I have a dye kitchen in my basement, and I dye it there, and I'm going to do a little demonstration of how I dye it. And then I bring it out here and hang it on the fence. And I dyed this today. This is my new fall colorway. It's going to be like a happy camper fall. And once I get started, in about 2 weeks, I'm going to go into heavy production of dyeing for the fall, because I have festivals coming up in the fall. This whole fence will be lined with yarn, and it's so pretty. I have so many videos and photos of the colorful yarn lining the fence. It's really pretty. And a lot of times when I'm doing this, the sheep come over and see what new colors I have, see if they approve. So also, when we go into the studio, I'll explain this again. This yarn is all commercially spun. I use their wool for my personal projects and for my painting. And I'll explain that later with that. But I use this for hand spinning and for my felting and for my weaving. I don't make it into yarn because I use this for my specialty yarns, but all this is commercially spun because I only have 2 sheep and I have thousands of pounds of yarn. So I buy it from a supplier in New York and one in Virginia, and they get it from all over the world. It comes from all countries all over and different mills all around the world.
And there must be a difference in the quality of the type of.
There's a difference in like this is merino. This is all the same yarn here, but inside I'll show you some of the differences. Some of it is yak, camel, mohair, all kinds of animals. And then it's blends of all of them, including nylon.
Oh.
This has 25% nylon. Nylon gives it a good substance, good for socks and things like that.
Okay. All right.
So over here is my patio, and once a month I have a studio tour with a dyers group, indie dyers, once a month, and usually the middle of the month. And then 3 times a year, there's a group of about 20 artists called the Countryside Artists Tour, and we have about a 30-mile radius in April, October, and December. And people come and they bring a picnic, they shop, they hang out, the knitters knit, they chat.
It's a lovely place.
And then they come, pet the dog. We have a lot of fun.
And you have beautiful flowers with it.
Yeah, and right now, all in bloom. And last year, I was inspired by these colors to do a color called Summer Garden.
Ah.
So it had a little bit of yellow and green, orange, and pink. It was really pretty. So over here, this is my studio. We built this designing kind of as we went. It's actually a whole building. my yarn. I have a shop set up in there. And right now, I'll walk over and I'm going to give a little spinning demonstration. So to explain how it's taken from that raw wool, I said I wash it and then it is carded. And I don't do the carding. I have someone else to do that. Or if I did do it, it takes a long time, and you can use hand cards or a drum carder. How it's done commercially is a drum carder is kind of looks like this. It has a bobbin with a lot of spiky things coming up, and it grabs the wool and it aligns the fibers. It takes those locks and aligns the fibers like this. And this is called roving. First, it's made into batting, which is really wide, and that's what quilters use. Sometimes
right.
they stuff quilt with hand stitch it.
Yeah.
Well, it's the batting, and then the batting is separated into pieces like this.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what that looks like, and then I sell it in 4-ounce increments.
Oh.
So I dye it first and then spin it, so it's more fun to watch the colors. So I used to have a old-fashioned spinning wheel, but this is much faster.
There it goes. It was working earlier.
Get a little electrical switch. So I can control the speed by this. I can control the tension with this. If I make it tighter, it's going to go on there faster. So it's going a little bit slow, so I'll turn it up a little bit. So what you do is you pinch and let the twist set, and you pull. And see, it looks like one continuous action here, but what I'm really doing is pinching, pulling, and then letting it go. So it's slipping through my fingers ever so slightly.
I think that's better.
And this is how yarn is made, either by hand or big machines. The big machines that people use, that mills use, have been around for over a century. And they really haven't changed much because the gearing and everything was just made so well. And they're very easy to fix. So most of the equipment is that old and it's still in use today. And some of these spinning mechanisms are the size of a large room. And it brings up the roving that's in 50-gallon drums and pulls it into the spinning wheel. So that's how that's done. And this is just very therapeutic and kind of zen-like.
I would think that would be, you could be out here for hours, just kind of thinking to yourself. And
well, there's a lot of terminology that we use that you might not know where it came from. And I'm sure everyone's heard the word spinster.
Yeah.
And that was the women that were not married off. They were the ones that were doing the spinning.
Oh.
In the olden days.
So we got a question. Somebody wanted to know how the wool is washed.
Oh, okay. I wash the wool in my washing machine. Now, don't get that confused with how you do your laundry. I have a top loader that's dedicated to washing and spinning out my wool. So what I do is, it's a big drum like that. So I can do, like half a fleece, and I fill it with very hot water. I put like dish soap, something that cuts the grease. And I put the wool in very carefully and push it down with a stick. And then I close the lid. It cannot rotate at all. It can't agitate at all. It just has to be still. And then I let it sit overnight until the water cools down. And then I spin it out. Wool can go in one direction. It just can't agitate. If it agitates even 2 or 3 times, it's going to felt. And we all know that when you put a sweater in the washing machine accidentally or the dryer, and it agitates it and the fibers get smaller and smaller. And why that is because every wool fiber has a barb on the end of it. And that's why it can stick together like this. And if you're agitating it, those barbs get all excited and they start getting tighter and tighter and smaller and smaller. And so you have a sweater that is like this big and as thick as anything.
Yeah.
So the way I do that is I spin the yarn out and then I bring it out here on a table or a big screen and I put it in the sun to dry. And I turn it over and dry it again. Now, how they do it at a spinning mill is a lot of times they just put it in old bathtubs, old bathtubs that are huge, and do the same thing. They put hot water in it, soap, and let it sit. And then occasionally they can kind of stir it a little bit. They drain it, spin it, and do that again until it's clean. So that's how it's all done. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's quite a process.
Yeah. So now I'm going to show you how I dye the yarn. This is, you have to heat the yarn for about an hour on a simmer, not a boil, because the boiling will excite those fibers again and it'll start to felt. So I'm just going to do a demonstration without the heat. So this is like, this is one of my bases. It's a real chunky base called Boogie. Most of my yarn bases are named after dances. So first of all, this is a mordant, and a mordant is what fixes the dye to the yarn. So I'll put this color on, I'll heat it for a half an hour to an hour, and the water will be totally clear and all the color will be on.
Really?
Because of this mordant. And the mordant I use is a vinegar base. You can use a regular 5% vinegar, but this is 45%.
Oh,
so
like acetic acid.
Yes,
Yeah.
very, very acidic. So that's all I need is like not even a quarter cup. So get it all mixed up in there. Now I can dye quite a bit. I'm going to put my apron on because usually I just have my black runaround clothes that I can get dirty, but I don't want to, since I'm going to be using these dyes. Put my gloves on. You don't want it to get on your hands. I had a hole in one of my gloves today, so my hands are.
So you have a dye spot.
So push the wool yarn down. And I'm also going to dye some roving. This is just plain natural colored roving. Put that down. Now, when the water's hot, it takes up, the wool takes up the water really fast. But since it's cold, I have to really smoosh it in there. And here's some of the locks that are washed. So I'm going to put that in too. I'm just going to stretch that out. So, Bill, if you want to come close to here, and you can just zoom right in there. Now I'm going to do a color that I call mermaid. So these are my dye thingies, and the dye comes in a powder form, and I make it into a liquid form. So I don't do anything scientific. I just do it by eye. A lot of people measure, so I just put the colors on like this, and as you see, the water is just covering the wool, and I can just keep putting it on and turn it over. Now this is just the first part of this.
Oh, I can smell that vinegar.
Yeah, it's really 45%. It's really strong.
It smells like the science lab in the high school.
Yeah, now you see where I want to do more of this second color because this is actually double here. So this will be, the length of that will be wider than this is. So.
Oh, I would have never thought of that.
Now I do colors that kind of go together. I don't do very many complementary colors, which are opposite on the color wheel, because I like colors that go one into the other. Like the green goes into the turquoise goes into the purple. The green does not go into the purple. So that's just how colors work. So
It's taking me back to elementary art
yeah,
class.
exactly. Those primary colors, secondary colors, and tertiary colors. Well, you'll see where I like to overlap the colors so that it kind of blends one into the other. So when you're knitting, it'll kind of blend instead of, you don't get these huge blocks of color. Now this will heat on the stove for about a half an hour to an hour. Some colors take longer to exhaust, and the word exhaust means all the color goes into the yarn. And the color, see how clear that water is? And you saw how much dye I
Yeah,
used.
that's, I don't know if you all can see it, but it's those are clear
Yeah, I
drops.
should have brought a spoon out. So this will cook for an hour, and then I will turn it over like this very carefully, like that, and see how white it is on the bottom. And I'll do the same thing. So I'll add the green where the green was. And the turquoise where the turquoise was. And the violet where that was. Now, how I dye, this is a silk scarf. And I'll explain what I do with these in a minute with my felting.
Oops.
So this is how, this is pure silk. And I use it for Nuno felting, which I'll explain. And if I were to dye this by itself, the colors would get all muddy because there's not much fabric here. So I always dye the scarf when I dye the yarn. And see how it just takes up that color? So wool and silk, mohair, anything that comes from an animal is called protein fibers. And protein fibers, you use a different dye and a different dyeing technique. The heat setting is what does the protein fibers. And cotton and any plant material like linen uses a different process of dyeing. It's a cold process. So you put the dye on and you don't heat it up and you let it sit overnight. So those are called plant fibers. They grow on a plant. So sometimes I think that it needs more color, so I'll just put more on. And so you can see where this kind of looks like a mermaid.
What a mermaid would wear.
Yeah. So I'm going to put this aside right now. And I'll cook that tomorrow, and it'll be hanging on the fence tomorrow.
Ah.
Should have brought over the towel, but I'll just use this. I'll show you. Explain a little bit about Nuno felting. Nuno is spelled N-U-N-O. And I don't know who came up with it or when it really happened. Probably in the last 30 or 40 years. But Nuno felting is when you take the silk scarf. So this was a scarf that I dyed like that. And you take the roving top and you put the locks or the silk or whatever you want on top of that. And everything embeds into the silk. And that's the process of Nuno. So I'll just go over a little bit how that's done. This is a large poncho cape thing that I did. And it was about twice this size because this is where you want the wool to shrink.
Oh.
So like that scarf was much longer. So you lay the fibers out the way you want it to shrink. So this was almost twice as big and it shrunk down to that. And this has a collar. So you see where I don't have the wool, it forms these little pockets like that. You can kind of see through.
Mhm.
And this is silk here, called the silk hanky.
Gorgeous.
So the way this is done, so I don't, you lay a sheet of plastic down, which is like thicker than saran wrap. It's actually a painter's cloth,
Oh, okay.
painter's plastic.
Yep.
You get it at Lowe's or Home Depot. So this is a scarf that I dyed, and you'll see where I always dye it in half so that it's even on both sides. So when you wear it, it's going to hang down like that. But when I'm laying it out, so I have a table in my basement that's longer than these scarves, but I just want to give you an idea of how this is done. So I sell these kits with all the instructions written out, and I also teach classes in them. Because the women just do, or men, I've had some men who are all different too, however they want to lay it out. So I usually do color on color. So I'll take the roving and I pull it out like this, and you can't pull it like that because the staple length, which is the length of the wool that I showed you from my sheep. So you have to kind of pull it like that, and you just want to keep it real light. And so you lay it down like that, and this is called shingling. So you lay it down, and you can't do it when there's a breeze. I don't usually do this outside. And so then this color, you do that, and then more of this color. And so you kind of get the idea of how this is working. So like that. So the whole thing is going to be laid down in the middle, and wherever the wool is, it's going to shrink, and it makes this ruffle. See, I don't have wool here. The wool is shrinking this way because I laid it out like that. So it's going to shrink like that. And then this is the wool hanky. These are really, really cool. And they stick to my hands. So this is made by a silkworm. And how it's done, see if I can get one that's really square. Yeah, here's one that's real square. So I get them they're about this size, and see that really nice edge. It's very, very shiny. So how they do this is they make a board or cardboard or anything that is solid about this wide. That's about 8, 9, 10 inches square. They put like 3 or 4 silkworms, and the silkworm will go to the edges of whatever they have, whatever structure they have. And that's why this edge, so you want a lot of that edge, because that makes this really, really nice. It really stands out because that's the most lustrous part. And so then when it's done, you have this beautiful silk square made by a silkworm. It's fascinating. So you take this apart. These are many, many different layers, and they're just so thin, but they just go a long way. So you pull it apart like that, and then you just lay it down like this.
Oh, I'm beginning to see how that
I don't
pattern
it
came
very
out.
much. I just kind of lay it down. Now, it has to have wool underneath it, or this isn't going to felt through this silk. And then I take the locks from my sheep that I've dyed and just start laying it out. And you can lay it out however you want. Like that. Some green on there. And then I always add a little bit of glitter. This is called Angelina Glitz, and it's a mylar. It's a man-made substance, but it's cut. Each fiber is cut at angles, so it really reflects the light. And so it just gives a nice shimmer. I use this in my my landscapes too when I paint with wool, which I'll show you in a little bit. So this will go up and down the scarf. There's plastic underneath. There will be plastic on top, but first you get it wet with warm soapy water. And the soap, just like Dawn detergent or something, the soap will make everything kind of slippery and it'll all felt in there. So you roll it up. So there's plastic on the bottom, plastic on the top, and then it's all rolled like this. So plastic will be on everything. And then I tie it really, really tightly. And then I throw it in the dryer. Not to dry it, but that banging motion, especially if I do 3 or 4 at a time, they're all banging against each other. And just that motion of them hitting each other will excite the wool and everything will felt like this, right into it. See, there's that silk hanky and the wool lock. So there's a lot of texture. And some of this, you'll see where I have some patterning. This one shows it more. These are silk saris, vintage silk saris from India that I buy on Etsy or on eBay. And it's great because it's 5 yards of fabric and they're beautifully patterned. So I just kind of tear it up into different segments and shapes. It doesn't really matter. And then that can go on top too. And because it's silk and you have wool underneath, everything is going to bond. And then you'll see how it crinkles. See, there's the silk sari coming through those little fibers. And it's kind of like ruching, if some people know what that means.
We have another question, and the question is, where did you learn all of this?
Class. I belong to an amazing felting group, and they take a lot of classes, and we learn from each other. But initially, I started to take classes from like the Art League in Alexandria. You know, there's a lot of people around here that do it too. So now we're going to go into the studio.
Okay.
And you'll see the whole array of it's a little low right now because this is a slower season. So I go from the thinner yarns, sock-top, bebop, there's more dance names, the twist, Charleston, and boogie. So it goes from thin to thick. And you can just make different things, like here's a poncho that I designed, or a skirt. Little shawls like that, hats and mitts. And then I have designers that use my yarn called Honeybee, Dancing Honeybee. So this is done with 6 different colors. And so you'll see those are the little bees. This is the honeycomb. So there's a lot of things that are named after my bees. And then I do kits. So I have all kinds. This was my colorway, the Happy Camper Spring, for the Maryland Sheep and Wool Fest, which is the largest one in the country. And it happens to be just an hour away at the Howard County Fairgrounds in May. So that was my colorway for there. Oh, here's something that I'm just getting into in the summer. It has to be done in the summer. This is ice dyeing. So it's a whole different way of dyeing. It's kind of fun. These are cotton and they were white, and you lay it down and then you put ice on top of it in a pan that has a strainer in it. You put ice on top of it and put the powder dye on top of the ice. And as the ice melts, it kind of goes, it makes these really cool designs. And it's all there. You really don't have any control over it. It looks kind of like tie dye. The colors separate and then just make these really cool patterns.
Mm.
So those are really fun. That's another thing that I'm doing classes on. Here's another. This is called the beast, an Angora goat. So there's that. And in here, more yarn. This is the really big chunky yarn. And these are my landscapes. They're really hard to pass.
Yeah, you're right. The glass.
They're beach scenes or mountain scenescapes. So here's one. That's the beach scene. And so you can see in the sun. See, I use that glitz. And this has silk yarn, my hand spun yarn, wool, and then the little glitz. This is the natural color and little nubs of wool. So lots of texture. And my palette is, just all the different textures. And I've been doing these little minis. I do these all in a row. So I do like 6 or 7 at a time. And then they can be, see how they, I don't know if I have them in the right order.
See if I can get them.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. It looks like sugarloaf.
Yeah, I do sugarloaf a lot. It's an easy mountain to do because it's so distinctive with that hump. And then I have a friend, William Price, who many of you must know, who does these beautiful yarn balls. So you put it and it doesn't get tangled. So
Get a close up of
yeah,
that.
aren't they gorgeous?
I just love people that could do that kind of work
Yeah.
with wood.
Yeah, it's really fun to watch him do that. This is another, a whole nother thing called eco printing. It's another dye process, and you can really see some of these a little bit more. These are leaves and flowers and pods that are put on paper, and it takes the tannin from the leaves. And we use another mordant, and it's iron. And you can make your own iron mordant by just putting rusty nails or hinges, or I find like the old nails along the railroad tracks. I'm always picking up old rusty things, put them in a bucket of water, and that's your iron mordant.
Oh.
And that's what it's, you put water on here and roll these up or put them again on tile. It's real tight, and then you simmer them for sometimes an hour or 2, and that leaches the tannins and the color out of the plant. Roses are really good. Sumac isn't good.
A little harder to get hold
You
of.
can buy that, but it just makes these just compilations. This is rust right here. You can really tell that. So, and speaking of rust, I did a kind of a sampler. This is an infinity scarf. It's all silk. And these are the rusty nails that I found. There's a hinge from that almost looks like a butterfly.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. So that's a hinge, and washers, rusty washers, a little hook. And so this is permanent. It won't wash out. So you can do a lot of different stamping almost, or dyeing with so many different things. I also carry supplies for weaving. This can be used for weaving. So this is on an embroidery hoop.
Yep.
This is velvet that I've dyed and silk. And I sell these these are great for kids, sell these little looms. And you can take this off and you can reuse this loom and put it on a piece of wood or driftwood or dowel or something like that. These have to stay because they, you don't take this here. People use that for crafts. I have embroidery. I dye embroidery floss too. About any kind of fiber, I'll dye. Remember these? Everybody comes in and says, I made those when I was a kid. Well, they've come back and they're very retro and they're really fun to do. People just love doing them. So these are the cotton and nylon loops for that. So,
well,
I think that about wraps it up.
That's great. I'm going to get out of the sun here.
Go back outside, but it's cooler. Yeah, it's much better out here.
Oh, it's such a beautiful place.
Yeah, and if it was a little bit later, we would get a really pretty sunset. So I hope that you all can come out. The next show that I will be having with the Dyers group, I don't know the date in August. It's like the 14th, 15th, or 16th, something, whatever that Saturday is.
Okay.
The middle of the month. And then our next studio tour will be the second weekend in October, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And that's the artist tour, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with that weekend.
Yeah, and a lot of people ask me what my hours are. They're by appointment. You just send me a text, email, or call, or whatever, and just tell me when you want to come.
Okay.
So.
Well, thank you very much for sharing all of this with us. This is fascinating. I learned a lot about it. I'm a person with a science background, so I'm just fascinated by the.
Yeah, this is kind of sciencey.
The chemistry of it.
I call my lab I call my dye kitchen the lab.
Yeah.
The very colorful laboratory. For sure.
Very good.
So if there's any questions, we can take those.
Yes, and I also wanted to point out that I put the Dancing Leaf Farm website and Facebook in the chat as well. So if you're interested in checking out more of Dallas's work, be sure to check out her Facebook and website as well.
Yeah, thank you. And I do have Dancing Leaf Farm on Facebook, Dancing Leaf Farm on Instagram. And I do have a YouTube channel, Dancing Leaf Farm. I'm putting videos up. So.
There was one last question about the hours for the dyeing group. The event you have in August.
Oh, it's 11 to 4. It's kind of a short span because it's summer, so it's really that busy. So we've cut the hours from 11 to 4. Now the studio tour hours, the Countryside Artisan tour is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 10 to 5. Oh, and the fiber art tour that we do once a month, there's 6 dyers that participate in that. And they're around Frederick and Mount Airy and just like a smaller area.
Everything anybody would need to be able to get involved in this.
Yeah, and all kinds of crafts.
Yeah, sounds like
and we can help you out.
Where do you find the dyers? Is there a flyer or whatever to find them?
It's called the Fiber Art Studio, and that's on Facebook.
Okay.
And Instagram. And it has the map with the places on it. And we have a website too, Fiber Art Studio Tour. FAST.
Okay, thanks.
Great.
I also put a link to the Dancing Leaf Farm YouTube in our chat. And I see another question that asks what brand of dye is used.
It comes from a company in Massachusetts called Prochem, Prochem, and these are wash fast acid dyes that I use for the wool. And for cotton and other plant fibers, it's MX reactive dyes. And they all are in a powder form.
Okay.
Feel free to unmute or leave any other questions you have in the chat at this time.
Dallas, I just have to say to everybody that's joining, if you have not been out to her studio, it's a sight to see. I mean, just watching you make these things or showing these demonstrations makes me want to come and buy something. They're just,
I enjoy sharing my space with people because it really is lovely, and I'm very lucky to live here.
Yeah, I wish you could feel how nice the breeze is
Yeah.
here and how
The dancing
beautiful.
leaves, right?
Yeah, and how
Yeah.
beautiful the yard is.
Yeah. Right. Well, you can come get a little. I don't know. It's very, very bright, but
Yeah, I don't know. This may glare everything
yeah,
out.
I think it'll
Yep.
probably be too glare.
Too glary.
Yeah, another half an hour. We'll probably have a gorgeous sunset tonight
Yeah.
with those clouds overhead. And there's one of the farm kitties. I only have their barn cats. They don't come inside. I could use their hair too because they're very furry.
Well, thank you again. This has been
Thank
a
you.
wonderful
My
opportunity.
Thank you. It was
pleasure.
wonderful.
Hope to see you on one of our tours.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
let me know if who you are if you come by, that you saw me on this.
On Poolsville Seniors.
Yep.
And getting a lot of, I'm getting a lot of chat window stuff here saying thank you.
Oh,
Thank you so very much.
So
Thank you.
much. I hope
Thank you,
all
Dallas.
enjoyed tonight's presentation as much as I did. And as always, if you think of any questions later, you can email us at info@poolsvilleseniors.org and we'll pass them on for you. We'd like to thank Dallas for his presentation as well as Bill for his camera work. If you enjoyed tonight's program, please consider joining us for more upcoming events. Like I mentioned, we're going to have game day August 23rd at Spear Hall. Thank you so much for joining. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dallas.
Bye.
Dallas.
Thank you.
Bye.